Now consider this life story of Amma. Grew up in a working class family, worked very hard through education, and finally became the business development manager for a major multinational organization right here in Ghana. Gets married to a handsome man who's also worked hard to secure a good job after school. The setback comes in a year after marriage when Amma gives birth to a child, which will put them through sorrow instead of joy. Now, the story of Amma is no different from those of many parents around the world who have given birth to autistic children. Let me tell you what autism really is. It is a neurological disorder that has an effect on normal brain function, and so it affects the development of a person's communication and social interaction skills. It is a lifelong condition that also affects millions of people worldwide. According to a US-based Center for Disease Control and Prevention, about 1% of the world's population have autism spectrum disorder. Now, the main challenge here is the stigmatization of persons living with autism. Not a hopeless situation, though. There's one man who is making a difference, and his name is Mike Lake. He's a member of parliament in Canada, representing the people of Edmonton, Wetaskiwin, and he is an autistic child himself. Has traveled to many parts of the world, including Ghana, advocating better care for autistic persons. He joins me for a conversation via Skype. Hello, Mike.
Hello.
So tell us a bit more about this advocacy. You've been to Ghana as well. You've been to other places. How is it going? Do you really hope to make any serious impact?
Absolutely, absolutely. I've been a member of parliament for 12 years. My son Jaden is 22 years old now, and I've seen real difference throughout Jaden's life, and I think we're seeing real momentum as we have a conversation about how we define normal in society, really. And you know, when I think about the challenges faced by families, and you talk about stigmatization, I think back to an interview that I did with my daughter, who's 13, Jaden's sister. She was 13. She's 18 now. And she was asked by the interviewer, Janae, do you ever sometimes wish your brother didn't have autism? Or do you ever wish your brother was normal like other kids? And she said, well, honestly, since Jaden was diagnosed with autism before I was born, I don't exactly know what a normal brother is like. So Jaden kind of is my normal, having autism. And that's really what we're shooting for, is that people with autism, regardless of where they are in their lifespan, that people realize that they're normal and that it's part of normal life to have people with autism in their lives, whether it be in the school system or the workplace or wherever it might be.
You've also been to Ghana, and I must say that it's perhaps, I don't know if it's a perception, but it's perhaps easier to deal with a situation or to deal with autism if you perhaps have a lot of money, because when you add poverty to autism, that's a very bad mix. What do you make of how, or maybe you have an advice on how to deal with it if you don't have the sort of resources that will help you make life easier for a child that is diagnosed with autism?
Well, interestingly, even in a country like Canada, there are challenges with money and treatment. And so there are families in some parts of Canada over the last 20 years that have had to take out mortgages against their homes, so borrow money to fund evidence-based treatment. I think that when we're looking, one of the things that we're trying to do is start up a global autism partnership, a partnership of organizations working on autism, plus international development organizations like UNICEF and Plan and World Vision and Save the Children, involving the Global Partnership for Education. And what we want to really do is work with governments around the world to help meet families where they're at, in the circumstances where they're at, and give them the evidence-based tools to help their children fulfill their full potential, and help people with autism wherever they are in their lives to fulfill their incredible potential that they have.
Let's speak about stigmatization. It's one of the things that's made it very difficult for even the children to try and live at least a life that's, you know, could be perceived to be normal. How have you dealt with the stigmatization, and how would you advise parents, anybody who is watching, who has autistic children on their hands, how do they deal with stigmatization?
You know, that's a great question. It's there seems to be a progression around the world in terms of this stigmatization. So the idea in North America, say 40 years ago, people would have blamed bad parenting for autism. And so somehow the parents did something wrong and children wound up having autism. I know that in other parts of the world, it's not just bad parenting. Some may try and explain it as a curse of some sort, those kind of things. So you can imagine on both of those fronts, there's tremendous stigma attached. And you're dealing with a situation for the family where there's already the pressures of trying to understand what's going on with the child and help them to mitigate, deal with the challenges that they have. So stigmatization is something that exists all around the world, and it's something that we need to address through conversations like this. And we see more and more higher profile people coming out and talking about the fact that they have a family member with autism. That is critically important to have those types of discussions, because what families need most is they need to see that there are other people going through the exact same thing they're going through. And what people with autism need to see is that there are people just like them facing exactly the same challenges. Because when you look at the numbers, if it's 1 in 100, that means that there would be between 50 and 100 million people around the world that would have autism. That's a lot of people. And stigmatization, we need to start by dealing with the stigmatization, I think, before we can really make that real progress for families.
So bringing families together or people who have similar issues together helps, you'd say?
It absolutely helps, but at the same time, those families also need to see that governments are investing in tools that will help them to move forward. So, you know, in Jaden's case, it required a lot of very intensive work by a lot of people to help him to get out of his own world, help him to start to understand what, how to deal with things that are abstract, right? Because people with autism have real strengths in the concrete world, but they have a lot of difficulty dealing with abstract things like emotions and interaction, human interaction. So things like getting along with classmates might be a difficulty in some cases. Things like getting a job. 85% of people with autism, even in North America, 85% of people with autism that are adults are unemployed. So these are real challenges, but there are experts who can help us address those challenges if we communicate and talk about that.
Okay, so talking to you obviously is one of the ways. Hopefully parents who are listening to you or watching you would have that encouragement to be able to deal with it. But finally, when is your advocacy coming back to Ghana?
Well, you know what, Ridwan and I, you know Ridwan, we've had an ongoing conversation. We've also engaged with autism organizations in Ghana, autism organizations that are more global in nature, and some other organizations like Right to Play, which is a phenomenal organization doing great work empowering kids through sports and the arts in Ghana as well. So I don't know exactly when I'll get to Ghana again, but the conversation, I promise you, is ongoing, because I think there's a real opportunity, a real awareness of the need in Ghana to do something, and a real willingness on behalf of the global experts and workers in this area to have an impact wherever they might have an impact. So we're really looking forward to continuing the work. Okay,
Mike, we look forward to seeing you here. Obviously, people are doing things about autism, but it's good to do some more. Thank you. Thanks. Mike Lake. Mike Lake is Member of Parliament in the Canadian Parliament. He has an autistic child, and he's been doing autism advocacy. You do know that we have a lot of children here in Ghana who are autistic, not just children, but a lot of autistic persons here in Ghana. And so the advocacy needs to go on. Hopefully you've grabbed a thing or two from what we've discussed, and it will help you deal with stigmatization. This is The Pulse.